In this video, we are going to talk about how to define the breaks or the bins on a histogram, and also how to customize the axis labels and the numbers such as X or Y axis on histogram in particular, but that would apply generally to other plots as well. I'll start by making my dataset available to me, and for that I'll type data and pass empty cars to it, which is the dataset I'm interested in. Okay. This loads my dataset into my environment. So at this point, if I go and type head and pass empty cars to it, and I say I want to see the first three or the three rows of this dataset, this will give me the first three rows of the dataset. First of all, let's go ahead and try to plot a histogram of one of the columns. I'll choose the first column, which is the miles per gallon, and without passing any values to it whatsoever. So hist, which is the function for histogram in R, pass to it empty cars, $sign, which will extract the column that we define or the feature. And that's it. This gives us a histogram. This is the basic histogram without any customization whatsoever. I see that the labels are the default labels, and I see that it has chosen about 5 bins and 6 breakpoints. So let's go ahead and try to customize this. The first thing I would like to customize is the number of breaks. Let's say I see that these breaks that I have are too few, right? The bins are too few. I want more details from this, right? I see that from 15 to 20, there are 12 cars that have 15 to 20 mileage, but I want to see more than that. I want to see more granular details than this. So let me make the breaks, which at this point is 6, to be, let's say, 8. What do I see? Nothing. The same exact graph. If I make it 10, now I see a graph that has more bins. Just for the sake of it, let's go ahead and try 12, same graph, 14, same graph, 16, same graph. At 17, I see that it actually increases the number of bins. And this is not very useful because I see there are many gaps in there. I don't want that. So that means what we had initially, about 10, this does make sense, and I would like to work with this. Another question comes, why didn't R change the number of breaks when I asked it to be changed? And the answer to this lies in the helped documentation of the histogram function. So let's go to that. And right here we see that the breaks argument is actually can be specified in a number of ways. We'll ignore the ones in which we have to provide the name of a function to it. We'll focus on the first one, which is a vector, and the third one in a single number. The third one is a single number, and that's exactly what we were doing. We were providing it a single number, like 8, 10, 12, these numbers, and hoping to identify the number of breaks this plot should have. Now the tricky part is that right here it says that in the last 3 cases, which includes the single number, by the way, is a suggestion only, and the breakpoints will be set to pretty values, right? So that means that what we give as a number, that will actually be taken just as a suggestion and not a strict requirement. The pretty breakpoints, if we read about it, it says that it calculates it based on round values which cover a range of values in X, and it gives the mathematics of how exactly it does that. Important thing here is that it's only a suggestion. It also specifies that if we I can see here that if I give it a vector, giving the breakpoints between histogram cells, because it's the first way I can give it, not one of the last 3 ways, that means it won't be a suggestion, but it will be a clear requirement. So let's go ahead and try to do that. Let's first try to see what is the minimum of this vector, of this feature. So the minimum of empty cars, MPG, is actually 10.4. Let's see what is the maximum of this. I could have seen these two together by typing range. So I see that 10.4 and 33.9. So that means I can round them off to 10 and 34. That would cover both the options, and it would be round numbers as well. So let's try to create a sequence. Let's store that sequence in, let's just call it break vector. So BRKVEC. Let's have a sequence starting from 10, that's the minimum rounded off, going till 34, that's the maximum rounded off. And let's increment this by, how about 3? Okay. So here is my break vector. It's numbers between, so there's from 10 to 34. How many numbers total do I have? Let's look at the length of break vector. I have total 9 numbers. Okay, 9 breakpoints. That means I'll have 8 bins. So let me go ahead and pass this on to hist function. So I'll go to hist. Let's go up. Here, instead of break equals to 10 or 7 or any of these one numbers, I'm going to give it my vector. I'm going to say BRKVEC. Do that. What do I see? I see a nice looking graph, and it has, so let's count the number of bins here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. 8 bins because I specified 9 breakpoints. Let's go ahead and try to change this a little bit so that instead of 3, I have it jumps with 4 each time. And let's execute this again. There you go. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have fewer bins because I'm jumping by a bigger number. Let's try 2. And let's try this again. There you go. Now this is the same number of bins that I was hoping to see. When I was entering a single number between about 9 to 16, it was giving me this as the result. What I mean by that is that R was choosing the same plot, the same number of breakpoints. If I was entering something like, instead of breaks equals to that vector, if I would give it anything between 9, exactly the same plot, nothing changed, to 16, exactly the same plot, only it would change on 17, right? So that means anything like that is perfectly okay. So this is okay, and I get my desired number of breakpoints. Let me go back to the vector, because this gives me way more control over how many breakpoints should be there. And another issue that arises is the x-axis labeling. You see that I see from 10 to 30 being labeled, and there is a mark on every 5 points. I see 10, 15, 12, 25, and 30. Now I need to, let's say I want to modify this so that every breakpoint is labeled, right? But currently it's not that way. You know, I see 10, and then the next breakpoint is not labeled. It's not labeled, so it's leaving, instead of putting a breakpoint every second, every 2 numbers, is putting every 5 numbers, and that's not very useful. So how can I change this? I can change this using many ways. One of the easiest that I found is that if you would go to histogram, so the help of hist, right? And here it will tell you that here are all the arguments you can change, but of course it can't give you all of the arguments. If they can be clustered together a different, if it's based on something else, like in my case graphical parameters, that's where it would be. So I clicked on graphical parameters, and I get all of the additional parameters related to graphics that I can change. And if you come down here under X, one of the option which I read through is here, Y So there's y-axp and there is x-axp as well. So if you go a little bit up, I will see here x-axp, because I'm dealing with the x-axis, not the y-axis. So this is the option I need. And here it says that you can provide to this argument, right, a vector of the form this. So it's going to be a vector. It has x1, x2, and n. It tells you that x1 will produce a mark at this point, which is basically means that with the beginning point. Sorry, not n. I'm looking at n at this point. So x1, x2, and n. Okay. So x1 giving the coordinates of the extreme tick marks. So extreme to the right, extreme to the left, and the number of intervals between the tick marks. All right. So that means if I would change this, and I would give it one more parameter, okay, and that one more parameter was going to be x-axp, right? This is the same argument I found right here, okay. And to this I provide a vector, so I can make a vector in R by using the C function, right? And here I would give it, because I know that my plot starts from 10 and goes till 34, so that's what I will do. I will say starting from 10, go till 34, okay. And now how many numbers do I want in the middle, right? How many of them do I want? So if I choose 12, okay, and why am I choosing 12? Let me clarify that as well, but let's first do that. If I choose 12, I see that 10 to 34, and there's a mark, there's a number on every breakpoint, okay. So this achieves the result that I wanted. But let's see, why did I enter 12? And that's because if I look at the length, length, length of my break vector, okay, I see that there were 13, right? So there were 13 breakpoints. What I needed was 12, because 13 breakpoints would result into 12 bins, right? And that's why I entered 12 right in here, okay. So did this achieve the result? Obviously there are a couple more ways we can do the same thing. There is another way where you can actually choose to not display the x and y axis limits at all, right? So choose not to display them, and then you can overlay on top of them any custom axis limits that you want, right? But that's slightly more complicated than this, and this works perfectly. So this would be our way to do something like this. I hope this helped. See you next time.